Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Stay Caffeinated. So, we left off last time when I was talking about how I first got interested in painting with coffees and teas and my first early attempts in doing so. I wanted to talk a little bit about how I've taken those early stages of working with the coffees and the teas in its purest form by only adding water to developing a more painterly type medium. So paint is made up of four main things that are found in paint. First is a pigment. So pigment is what gives you the color. Traditionally, pigments can come from minerals, plants, clays. Pigments can be natural or synthetic, and they are finely ground particles that are responsible for the color and the opacity. Second thing is a binder, and think of a binder as your glue that holds everything together. So the pigment alone won't stick to anything. It needs that binder to stick and become pliable and adhere to a surface. The binder is like the glue that grabs onto the pigments and it makes the paint adhere to your whatever your surface is, whether it's paint, paper, canvas, wood, wooden boards. I know a lot of people paint on different surfaces. So for coffee and tea painting, I experimented with the natural binders to thicken and stabilize the brew, basically. So things like gum arabic or even homemade alternatives like flour and water, they transform the drink into an actual paint medium instead of just a stain. The third thing is the solvent, or sometimes it's referred to as a vehicle. It's that liquid that makes the medium spreadable, paintable, gives it that spread to carry across the canvas. So think of the solvent as the liquid part of your paint that makes the paint flow. Finally, we have other additives. These are things that you can add to the paint. In my process, with the coffees and teas, it is necessary. Painting with those natural pigments, using only water and the binder, I was finding that things were fading no matter what vibrant color I was getting, whether it was a rich red or a deep blue, it would fade due to the process of oxidation. So everything oxidizes unless you add an additive to it. The colors in my early paintings were also fading due to UV, ultraviolet light exposure. Those are the two factors, oxidation and UV exposure. I had to add additives that would keep colors from fading to my painting medium. Early on, I was adding all of this stuff kind of on the fly, right? I would start with the pigment brewed down originally from those induction cookers, and then I would add water for the flow, which is my solvent, and then I would add the binder. Once I realized that, hey, I have to keep I have to keep colors from fading, that was another additive that I had to add on the fly. It got very cumbersome trying to figure out ratios on the fly. Again, when you're dealing with so many different types of teas and coffees, the chemistry is a little different. So learning that I had to deal with that problem of keeping the colors from fading and adding something else to the process, it started to get messy mixing things on the fly because all of these different teas and coffees have their own chemical makeup. Like I said before, they respond differently to everything you're adding to it. So I thought, okay, it's time to slow down and actually figure out why they're fading and come up with my own painting medium, which is a mixture of the binder, the solvent, and those additives that I was talking about to keep the colors from fading. Making a medium of all four of those things, and actually just adding that to the pigment. Once I did that, it really started to open things up. So I have some of these tests here. Early on, and this is coated with a varnish, but these are some of the tests that I would do early on, where I would get these different tones and I would expose them. I would put them outside, oxygen and UV in the summertime, and I would expose them, and I would make notes on everything that was working and everything that was not working with all these colors. So I kept changing the ratio of my additives for the fading process, the binder, and the solvent, water, and I would just add them to the natural pigment. Once I did that, that process took I don't even remember how long, but it took a long time to get that right. But that sped up the process. One of the challenges with when you're making your own paints basically is the process can get bogged down. You can spend so much time making the paint, not enough time painting. So this allowed me to quickly, once I figured out all those ratios, I would put it in the bottle, squirt bottle, and I would add it to my pigment. So it was already out of the gate, ready to go. You're not adding different things, trying to add it on the fly like that. So that changed my process completely. Last thing, I talked a little bit about my process of getting different tones from what are essentially 11 different teas and coffees. Mixing the coffees and teas that I use and I've played with a lot of them, but they are able to be mixed one tea to the other. So if I'm using one tea and I combine it with another tea, it actually mixes pretty fluently. Now I had to go through a lot of trial and error. So there are some of your herbal teas, your fruit teas, anything that comes with a fruit, any pigment that comes from a fruit is very sticky. It creates a very tacky film on things, and it's not really painterly. It's not something you want to paint with. So a lot of teas had great color, coming out, when I was testing with them, but when I was running tests, but as far as being able to paint with them, they didn't work great. When I combined them with other teas, I would get this clumpy, it just didn't work. But now I have, like I said, probably about 11, maybe if you include the coffees, about 12 different coffees and teas that I can combine without having to worry about any of that. So there are a couple really good resources for painting with natural pigments. There are 2 really good books. I am going to put the link below in the description to Amazon. Check it out. See you next time.